Warning, this podcast contains unfiltered logic, unlicensed sarcasm, and unapologetic American values. Listener discretion is advised, especially if your safe space requires trigger warnings for words like freedom, patriotism, or accountability. We're about to dive into the stories that the mainstream would rather spin, bury, or sugarcoat, and we don't do any of that here. If you're tired of being talked down to, lied to, or gaslit by the same people who can't define what a recession is, you're in the right place. Buckle up. This is Data and Dissonance, and tonight we're taking the gloves off.
Welcome back to Data and Dissonance, the one place where we don't need a permission slip to say what's on our minds. Tonight, we've got a 2-for-1 special. First, Oklahoma decides to put teachers through an America First loyalty test, because apparently reading, writing, and arithmetic weren't quite enough. Then we're heading straight to D.C., where Trump's nominee for the Bureau of Labor Statistics has the establishment sweating bullets. E.J. Antoni is about to take the red pen to government numbers, and you know the swamp creatures don't like it when someone checks their math. Buckle up. This one's gonna rattle both the classrooms and the corridors of power. All right, folks, buckle up because the crew is back in the house. First up is Brian, our MAGA firebrand. He's like an American flag with a beard and a subscription to Bass Pro Shops. If it's Trump, freedom, or grilling a steak the size of your head, Brian's your guy. Then we've got Daniel, our conspiracy maestro. You could give this man a Sudoku puzzle and he'd find 3 CIA black sites hidden inside it. He connects dots most of us didn't even know existed, and whether you agree with him or not, you always walk away wondering, wait, what if he's actually right? Next is Rachel, the independent voice of reason. She's the one pulling us back down to earth when the rest of us are floating off into political orbit. Rachel's the referee in this match. If she had a whistle, she'd be blowing it non-stop. And last but definitely not least, our newest addition, Skylar Bloom. Now listen, don't let the Prius fool you. Sure, she's all about sustainable living, recycling, and reminding Brian that plastic straws are the devil, but she's sharp, passionate, and not afraid to go toe-to-toe with the rest of us. She might argue that even our coffee blends are tools of capitalism, but hey, at least she brought her own reusable mug. Skylar keeps us on our toes and gives us that perspective we didn't even know we needed, until she says it. And me? I'm Artie, your host and ringmaster of this circus, trying to keep the peace with a mic, a little sarcasm, and way too much coffee. This episode is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series. If you like your fiction fast-paced, razor-sharp, and grounded in real-world grit, grab The Covenant Protocol and The Prophet Directive. With Book 3, Black Echo Rising, coming this December. Available now on Amazon. And hey, while you're fueling up for the fight, grab a bag of Data and Dissonance coffee. 3 blends, roasted in the USA. High Lakes Light Roast, Rock Creek Medium Roast, and Bitter Root Dark Roast. Whole bean or ground, because freedom means choosing how you brew. Check out the full lineup at dataanddissonance.printify.me. Oklahoma just turned its classrooms into the front lines of the culture war. The state rolled out a new America First teacher vetting policy. Think background check, but instead of looking for DUIs or felonies, they're combing through social media to see if you've ever liked a BLM post, criticized Trump, or dared to say the word equity without gagging. Supporters say it keeps indoctrination out of the classroom. Critics say it's a purity test straight out of the Soviet playbook. So let's break it down. Is Oklahoma saving kids from Marxism, or just slapping red, white, and blue duct tape over free speech? Brian, Oklahoma says this is about keeping politics out of the classroom. You've been calling for this kind of thing for years. Is this the start of taking schools back, or just a headline stunt?
This isn't a stunt. This is the bare minimum. For decades, we've had teachers sneaking critical race theory, gender ideology, and socialist economics into kids' heads under the guise of education. Finally, a state is saying, nope, if you want to teach American children, you'd better actually believe in America. It's not about politics, it's about patriotism. You can't coach the Yankees if you're secretly rooting for the Red Sox. Same with classrooms. If you're embarrassed by the flag, you don't belong in front of the chalkboard.
So what you're saying is, no commies in the cafeteria line, no pronouns on the whiteboard. Got it, but let me push you. Doesn't this open the door to the left doing the same thing? Imagine California vetting teachers for being too conservative. Wouldn't you scream government overreach then?
Difference is, the left already does it. Try being a pro-life Christian applying in San Francisco. You'll be blacklisted before you get to the parking lot. Oklahoma is just leveling the field. Call it overreach if you want, but I call it course correction. For once, conservatives are actually playing offense instead of whining from the sidelines.
All right, Brian's calling this a MAGA home run. Let's see if Rachel thinks Oklahoma is protecting kids, or just protecting echo chambers. Rachel, Brian says it's patriotism, not politics. What's your read? Safeguarding classrooms or sliding toward thought policing?
This is exactly the kind of slippery slope conservatives always warn about, except now they're greasing the hill themselves. Once you let the state decide what's the right opinion to hold, you've already lost the freedom you claim to be defending. Today it's banning BLM posts. Tomorrow it's banning a book report on Martin Luther King. Education should be about teaching kids how to think, not making sure every teacher parrots the same party line. If this is about patriotism, then patriotism's been redefined as loyalty to one man and one ideology.
So Rachel's saying it looks less like school pride and more like a Stalin starter pack. But let me press you on this. Supporters say parents overwhelmingly back this because they're sick of activist classrooms. If democracy is about giving people what they want, doesn't this policy check that box?
Democracy doesn't mean mob rule. It means checks and balances. Parents' voices matter, but so do constitutional protections. The same Constitution conservatives love to wave around protects free expression, even when it makes us uncomfortable. If Oklahoma wanted more transparency, they could record classrooms or publish syllabi. But vetting someone's private posts? That's not transparency, that's surveillance. And it's a very un-American way to claim you're defending America.
All right, so Rachel's saying Oklahoma wrapped Lady Liberty in barbed wire and called it freedom. Daniel, I can already hear your theory about who's really behind this. Daniel, Oklahoma says this is about keeping Marxists out of classrooms. You say?
I say follow the money. These vetting programs don't build themselves. There are third-party contractors scraping social media, building teacher dossiers, and selling it back to the state. This isn't about kids, it's about contracts. It's the same surveillance industry that built predictive policing software and NSA data centers, just rebranded for the culture war. They're training people to accept being monitored, and the easiest test subjects are teachers. Today, it's vetting them for tweets. Tomorrow, everyone else.
So you're saying it's not about algebra, it's about algorithms. Fair enough. But let me push you. If this is just a money grab, why does it resonate so deeply with conservative voters? They're not reading procurement contracts.
Because narrative sells better than numbers. You tell a parent their kid's being brainwashed, and they'll throw money at anyone promising a fix. Doesn't matter if the fix is a billion-dollar surveillance database. That's the beauty of the con. You sell fear, you rake in profit, and you wrap it in a flag so nobody asks questions. It's the oldest trick in the playbook. Scare, surveil, cash out.
Daniel says Big Brother just got a cowboy hat and an Oklahoma accent. Skylar, let's see if you think this is fascism or just another reason to ban paper worksheets. Skylar, you're new to the table. What do you see when you look at Oklahoma's teacher loyalty test?
I see fear driving policy instead of vision. If you really cared about kids, you'd be talking about crumbling infrastructure, underpaid teachers, and classrooms running on broken AC units. Instead, they're combing through Facebook to see if Mrs. Johnson shared a climate march flyer. This isn't about protecting children. It's about silencing dissent and distracting from the fact that Oklahoma ranks near the bottom in education funding. Vetting policy won't raise test scores, but it will raise paranoia.
All right, so Brian's cheering patriotism, Rachel's warning about barbed wire. Daniel's screaming, "Follow the money," and Skylar's basically saying the school roof's still leaking. Let me press you one more time. If you were rewriting this policy, what would you push instead?
Invest in teachers, not police them. Give them the resources to teach science, civics, and history accurately, even when it's uncomfortable. Stop treating educators like the enemy and start treating them like the backbone of democracy. Because if we keep driving talented teachers away with loyalty tests, all we'll have left are underpaid babysitters teaching kids how to pass a state test instead of how to live in a free society.
All right, so Skylar's turning the loyalty oath into a GoFundMe for air conditioners. Brian's veins are popping, Rachel's nodding, Daniel's digging for FOIA requests. This one's not cooling down anytime soon. Oklahoma just lit a match under the culture war classroom. Some see patriotism, others see paranoia, and still others see dollar signs. But the bigger question is, what happens when politics turn schools into battlefields? The answer may shape not just Oklahoma's kids, but America's future classrooms. Next up, we shift from state schools to federal power, where Trump's pick for the Bureau of Labor Statistics is making the swamp shiver. All right, let's pivot from Oklahoma classrooms to the marble halls of D.C., where Trump just dropped his pick for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, E.J. Antoni. Now, this guy isn't your typical buttoned-up economist. He's a Heritage Foundation scholar, he's been ripping the Fed, and he's got receipts on calling out cooked numbers. The left is already screaming that Trump's putting a watchdog in charge of the henhouse, while MAGA world is cheering that someone will finally pull back the curtain on government data games. So let's ask the real question. Is this about transparency, or is it about control? Brian, you've been saying for months that the Biden years left us with clown world numbers. Is Antoni the guy to set the record straight, or just another bureaucrat with a red tie?
Finally, someone with guts. For too long, we've had economists who think their job is to protect the narrative, not the numbers. Antoni's been calling out the Fed and the White House for straight-up lying about inflation, jobs, and debt. Putting him in charge of BLS is like hiring a bulldog after years of poodles. The left hates it because if the numbers get reported honestly, their policies look like the dumpster fires they are.
So you're saying Trump just hired a bulldog to chew through all the cooked books? Let me push back on this. What do you say to critics who warn this just makes BLS another political weapon? Red numbers under red leadership.
The only people politicizing numbers are the ones who lied in the first place. If your entire economy collapses because someone stopped sugarcoating stats, maybe the problem wasn't Antoni, maybe it was your policies. Trump's not politicizing data, he's de-weaponizing it.
Rachel, Brian calls Antoni a bulldog for the truth. Do you see a watchdog or just Trump's lapdog?
Here's my problem. If every economic number becomes a partisan fight, the public loses faith in the whole system. Yes, there were flaws under Biden, and yes, Trump's trying to fix that. But picking someone whose brand is tearing down the establishment doesn't necessarily build trust. It just shifts the target. We need credibility, not just confrontation.
Credibility instead of confrontation. So you're saying Trump picked a brawler when we maybe needed a bridge builder. Let me throw this back at you. If you were designing a fix for BLS, what would you prioritize first?
Independence. The more BLS looks like it's under Trump's thumb, the more every number gets dismissed as propaganda. Create firewalls, make the data transparent to the public in real time, and let outside watchdogs audit it. That's how you restore trust, not by just flipping the narrative.
Daniel, you've got that look like this is all part of some bigger plan. Is Antoni just an economist? Or is this Heritage's Project 2025 sneaking into the bloodstream?
Exactly. This isn't just about numbers. It's about control of the narrative. Project 2025 has been open about wanting to dismantle bureaucratic power, and this is step one. You put your guy at BLS, suddenly inflation data, job reports, all the levers that move markets and politics, they're filtered through your worldview. It's not a nomination. It's infiltration.
So to you, this isn't Antoni crunching numbers. It's Antoni crunching democracy. Let me go deeper. Does this mean every Fed meeting, every jobs report, every market forecast is now part of the 2025 script?
Bingo. You rewrite the stats, you rewrite the story, and eventually you rewrite reality. The media will argue over percentages, while the real game is consolidation of control. The economy doesn't run on money. It runs on perception. Whoever controls the data controls perception.
Skylar, you've been quiet, but I'm guessing you're already rolling your eyes. What's your take? Antoni the reformer or Antoni the Trojan horse?
He's the Trojan horse galloping right into the agencies. This is another fossil fuel-friendly, corporate-funded ideologue who's going to slash anything that points to inequality or climate costs. BLS tracks more than just jobs. It touches wages, energy, and housing. Do you really think Antoni is going to highlight how climate disasters hurt working families? He'll sanitize the data to fit the narrative of growth at all costs.
So Antoni's not just crunching numbers? In your view, he's crunching the planet. Let me follow up on that. If you had your way, what should BLS be reporting that it isn't right now?
Climate-adjusted economics. Factor in the billions lost to wildfires, floods, and extreme heat. Put a line item for the cost of environmental collapse in every jobs report. Because until we measure it, we're just cooking the books on humanity's future.
So there you have it. Brian's cheering for the bulldog, Rachel's worried about credibility, Daniel sees infiltration, and Skylar's demanding carbon audits on every spreadsheet. Trump's pick for BLS isn't just about numbers. It's about who owns the story of America's economy. And make no mistake, that story moves markets, votes, and futures. Stick around, because after the break, we'll close out with final thoughts and tie this whole crazy week together. All right, folks, we've gone from classrooms in Oklahoma to the data war rooms in DC. And if nothing else, tonight proves one thing. The fight for America's future isn't just in ballots or borders. It's in the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. Let's wrap this up with some final thoughts.
Look, here's the bottom line. America First isn't a slogan, it's a survival strategy. When Oklahoma says it wants teachers who won't poison kids with leftist garbage, I say good. About time we defended the classroom. And when Trump puts Antoni in charge of BLS, I say finally, someone with the guts to expose the fake stats that propped up Biden's failures. Call it bulldogging, call it MAGA economics, I call it honesty. The elites can whine all they want, but the silent majority is watching, and they're ready for real leadership that doesn't bow to the swamp.
I hear you, Brian, but my worry is this. We've got to be careful not to replace one brand of propaganda with another. If conservatives want to win hearts and minds long-term, we have to show we can govern with transparency, not just outrage. Parents in Oklahoma want good teachers, not political loyalty tests. Workers in America want fair numbers, not partisan spin. If we keep turning every institution into a battleground, we risk tearing down the very trust that keeps democracy standing. I'm all for accountability, but accountability has to cut both ways, no matter who's in charge.
And that's where the illusion comes in. You think Oklahoma's vetting teachers just for ideology? That's the surface story. What's underneath is a blueprint, a test run for centralizing narrative control. Same with Antoni at BLS. This isn't random, it's coordinated. You don't seize power all at once, you chip away at trust in every institution until people beg for a reset. Call it Project 2025. Call it the Heritage Playbook. Call it whatever you want. But make no mistake, this is system-level engineering, not just a couple of headline-grabbing moves. And once that machine is built, it won't matter who's in the Oval Office. The machine will run itself.
And here's what I can't get past. While we argue over teachers and statistics, the planet keeps burning. Climate isn't waiting for red states or blue states to finish their culture wars. Every year of inaction costs lives, homes, and billions in disaster relief. And yet, not one of these fights is framed around resilience or sustainability. What good is a classroom if the community around it is underwater? What good are jobs reports if half the jobs disappear after the next wildfire? To me, it feels like America is rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, and no one wants to admit the ship is already taking on water.
All right, that's the panel. Bulldogs and bridge builders, conspiracy warnings, and climate alarms. And if you take anything away from tonight, it should be this. The real battles shaping our country don't always happen in the spotlight. They happen in state legislatures, in bureaucratic nominations, in the quiet corners where rules are written and rewritten. That's where the future of freedom is forged or forgotten. Whether you see it as reform, overreach, or something in between, the fight is already here. And we don't get the luxury of sitting it out. Remember, this is Data and Dissonance. Speak truth, stir thought.